Is Sony about to announce the PS5 Pro? And before I jump into it all, I want to let you guys know that this video is sponsored by me. Yes, I have so many links down in my description for any PS5 accessory you might need. So with Microsoft just delaying Starfield and Redfall out of 2022, people are obviously looking to PlayStation. For the rest of the year, the only big exclusive we have to look forward to is God of War Ragnarok, and the feeling in the community at this point is that that game is just not going to be ready for the end of the year. But rumors have been circulating from Jeff Grubb, the most famous leaker in the industry, that we could be seeing a PlayStation Showcase in June. Now, to me personally, that timing makes a lot of sense. I mean, we can't totally rely on leakers because, I mean, how many times have we heard that Hogwarts Legacy was going to show up in the next State of Play, and then the next State of Play would come, it would be about Horizon Forbidden West, it would be about Gran Turismo 7, then we just randomly, out of nowhere, got one all about a bunch of Japanese games, and then finally, just out of the blue, Sony did a Hogwarts Legacy one. So they're kind of, it seems like, trying to juke the leakers a little bit to stop the leaks from ruining big surprises. But June is famously when E3 was. We know Summer Games Fest is happening. We know all the other publishers are doing their own thing. So in my mind, it seems like something Sony could do, you know, to have one of these big PlayStation showcases where they put out that nice background with the chrome square circle cross triangle and say, yes, we are doing an event, Apple style, baby. You got some big stuff to look forward to. And knowing how wide open the rest of the year is and how wide open early 2023 is, I think it's about time we can start speculating on what we might see. So the first thing I'm going to start out with is The Last of Us remake. This has been rumored and rumored and rumored again. This is definitely something that is happening. I'm 99% sure. We have seen too much smoke for there not to be fire. This seems like a really cool idea on Sony's part. You know, The Last of Us 2 just came out. Of course, we're probably going to be getting a director's cut of that game as well that comes along with the new multiplayer game. But in the meantime, while we wait for that, having a full featured full price game that Sony can release just about 6 months before the HBO series, that seems like a no-brainer for them, because I know The Last of Us Remastered works on the PS5, but I play that game every year around Halloween, and last Halloween was the first year where I was like, whoa, this game's kind of showing its age a little bit. And I think what made it feel that way is playing The Last of Us Part 2 just a year prior to that. And I'm not trying to throw shade to how The Last of Us looks or plays, because it still looks and plays really, really good, but it's such a great experience that if they could rebuild it from the ground up, even out some of the graphical issues and make it run at 60 FPS, specifically with The Last of Us Part 2's excellent combat, I would never say no to something like that because it just sounds so absolutely perfect. I guess I'm one of the few people who really loved The Last of Us Part 2's story. To me, I thought Abby was actually a great character. I enjoyed playing as her more than Ellie. I know that's like PlayStation blasphemy, but that's just me. I'm never going to deny though that The Last of Us Part 1 was a significantly better game from a story perspective, and if you take that story and pair it with the gameplay, which in The Last of Us Part 2, I think the gameplay was just objectively better in pretty much every way, you end up with essentially the perfect video game. The Last of Us is one of the best. I think we'll see at least the remake, and if not, Last of Us Part 2's director's cut. The next game I think will be featured at whatever showcase this ends up being is Resident Evil Village. We know that it sold well enough that Capcom said that they would start working on DLC. Of course, they did start working on it after the game came out. It's not like with normal games where the game is finished well before it comes out, and then they start working on DLC that they can release a few months later. This was DLC that was started when the game came out, which is very similar to the Chris Redfield Not a Hero DLC for Resident Evil 7. So Resident Evil Village has been officially out for a year at this point. I think it's about time we start seeing that expansion for it. They did leave the story open at the end of the game to really continue on with spoilers, minor spoilers, Ethan's daughter as the main character. But I'm so glad, spoilers, saying spoilers again, that when the person zoomed in on that final cutscene, when you see someone next to Ethan's daughter when she gets into the car, it's Ethan. Ethan's there, he's with her in some way. So yeah, I want to see how that story resolves, because yeah, after playing the Evil Dead game, I was just reminded of how much like Evil Dead Resident Evil 7 is, and I really want to go back and replay it and get back into that world. But I would definitely love to give Resident Evil Village another playthrough as well, and having DLC to jump right into after the game would be so much more motivating to play that game again. Also, we just saw that Reverse, the multiplayer deathmatch game that was supposed to come out with Village, but then got delayed for an indefinite amount of time, was just rated. I feel like that could be something that shows up as well. I feel like it's a good time to celebrate the launch of that game with the DLC of Resident Evil Village. Like, you get people back into Village with some DLC and then allow them to also access this multiplayer game at the same time. That's just some good corporate synergy that I think Capcom would really like. Speaking of Capcom, I've heard that we could see Dead Rising return sooner rather than later. Dead Rising 4 was not that good. It was supposed to be much better than it actually turned out. You know, they're bringing back the Williamette Mall, they're bringing back Frank West, and it just felt bloated and messy and just not really that focused. So Capcom closed down Capcom Vancouver and said they were taking that franchise within the studio, and everyone just kind of assumed that it was going away forever. But when they just did a recent investors call, they said it's one of their marquee franchises, so I wouldn't assume they'd be leaving it dormant for that long. Another series that I think absolutely has to show up at an event like this is Silent Hill. This was actually supposed to show up last year during E3. Like, Konami had a scheduled event that they ended up canceling, and then now it's a year later and we're hearing all these rumors that Bloober Team is remaking Silent Hill 2, that Annapurna Interactive is making short story-based episodic games in the Silent Hill universe, and that a Japanese developer is making a mainline Silent Hill game. Any and all of these games could be announced at an event like this, and pairing Silent Hill back up with Sony after the last few games were on the Wii, that seems like a great move in my opinion. I feel like Konami would be super smart to have this game revealed at a Sony event, because Sony has been killing it with these Eastern games. Another game I'm super excited just popped up in Game Informer today is the Callisto Protocol. Now, this is a new game that is being developed by a studio called Striking Distance, and the reason it's worth paying attention to is that it's being helmed by the guy who created Dead Space, and it's supposedly going to be a spiritual successor to Dead Space. I know we have the remake coming allegedly in January. I'm pretty excited about that, but I don't know, just having the original creator of the franchise making his own follow-up to Dead Space instead of a remake that's just trying to do what we've already played before, I'm a little bit more interested in that just because it's more exciting. Now, obviously, that's a bigger risk. That could turn out to be a much worse game than a remake of Dead Space probably will, but again, I'm a risk taker. I'm excited about that, and I feel like that's a perfect game to show up at a Sony event. It could also show up at Summer Games Fest though, because I'm pretty sure we saw it revealed at the Game Awards, so there's that Jeff Keighley connection already. The Final Fantasy franchise basically has to make some sort of appearance. I feel like the launch of Final Fantasy 16 is right around the corner. We got that initial reveal video at the first PlayStation Showcase way before the PS5 even came out. We haven't really seen a whole lot of that game since then, and it was delayed just a little bit, but I feel like 2023 is going to be that game's year. I'm really excited for it. It's a much gorier, brutal, bloodier Final Fantasy than what we've seen before. It kind of reminds me of Dragon's Dogma, so yeah, that's something I'd like to see. And we also just heard that we'll be hearing news in the coming months about Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now, whether or not that's the Steam release because it's been on the Epic Game Store for so long, or if it's more PS5 DLC, or if it's Final Fantasy Remake Part 2, I have no idea, but I feel like Square Enix has to get the second part of that remake out sooner rather than later. People want to play it. They only covered the first few hours of the original game in that first part, and yeah, I feel like that'd be a good thing to start talking about at a showcase. I know you guys see my shirt today. I'm still holding out hope for Bloodborne. We need a remaster or at least a 60 FPS patch that evens out the frame pacing in that game. They're adding it into PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium, so yeah, I feel like now is the time to really either give us a remake or a remaster. And then my final pie in the sky wish is some sort of PC launcher for PlayStation games. I love playing them on Steam, but if they could counter Xbox with their own launcher that allows you to access games you already bought on PS5 and download them and play them on your PC, like God of War, Days Gone, Horizon, Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut, which we know is coming to PC eventually, that would be super smart and would get people really excited. And knowing that this event is supposedly in the summer, it got me thinking back to when Sony would do those indie days of play or whatever during the middle of the summer, where it'd be 4 weeks in a row. They would pick 4 awesome indie games out and release them one at a time, week by week. That was a great way to find some awesome indie games. I feel like if they announced the return of that, it would be really cool. But the other thing that they evolved into doing with that Summer of Gaming, or whatever you want to call it, event, was they would always release a cool special edition. I remember the 500 million PS4 that was like the clear blue one that looks so cool. They also released some cool controllers around then, so now could be the perfect time to start releasing a PS5 special edition. Now, Xbox has already released one with the Master Chief version that came out with Halo Infinite, and it was really cool. I know people shredded them at the time because it was like, you can't even get the regular edition on shelves and you're already doing a special edition. But now we're almost 2 years into the PlayStation 5's life cycle. I feel like now is about the time when they can start doing special editions. I know they usually like to wait until the slim model comes out to really go crazy with that, because that's what keeps people excited about the brand, but they haven't done any special editions. And by this point in the original PS4's life cycle, we had already seen that incredible PS1 edition version, which I didn't get. I wish I got it. I tried so hard to get that one, but I did get the controller. But if Sony really wanted to blow people's minds, they could announce some hardware. Now, I know the PSVR 2 is supposed to be out by the end of the year or early next year. I'm excited for it. I'm not just like megaton hype for it. What I would really love to see is some sort of handheld from Sony, whether they partner with Valve to make games more official on the Steam Deck or come up with something themselves. Announcing some sort of handheld partnership or new console at an event like this would be absolutely incredible. The Vita was so ahead of its time, being able to track trophies, being able to use your same PSN account, having online multiplayer and stuff like Resistance Burning Skies, Black Ops Declassified, and Killzone Mercenary was so cool. I used to play this game Soul Sacrifice all the time on the PlayStation Network. You could even answer your messages, add friends. You could do pretty much anything you could do on the PS3 or PS4 on the PS Vita, and it was incredible. So knowing that people are getting more excited about handhelds again, the Nintendo Switch is blowing both the PS5 and Xbox away in numbers. It's absolutely insane. And seeing how well the Steam Deck is doing, I think Sony sooner rather than later is going to realize that they're leaving money on the table. I mean, even Xbox is getting into the handheld ring. They're working with Razer to make a device that runs like Android or something that you'll be able to stream your Xbox Game Pass games to. That seems really cool, but if Sony was able to make a device that can natively run these games at least as well as the Steam Deck, if not better, that would just blow people away. I think now is the time where Sony can finally have a handheld that's super successful and doesn't just get popular because you can pirate any game you want on it. This is like 99.9% not going to happen, but that's kind of what makes me think it could happen. Maybe we could finally see some sort of hardware revision on the PS5. Maybe not a full PS5 Slim, but Sony could announce a new model that's quieter, uses less energy. Maybe they eliminate the digital model and drop the disc drive version by $100. We have seen just recently that there's a new serial number out in the wild over in Japan. And when they do stuff like that, it's usually to make the heatsink smaller. But what if it was a little bit more of a drastic change that makes the PS5 more available and a little bit cheaper? I mean, if they could figure out how to get a cheaper chip that does the same thing, there's really no reason why they shouldn't, because people still really want the PS5 and things are getting kind of dire. We just talked about it on the channel over the weekend, but over in Japan, the Xbox Series S and X managed to outsell the PS5 by quite a wide margin, like 2,000 units on PlayStation side to 6,700 units on Xbox's side. That should never be happening in Japan, and Sony's got to do something about this hardware shortage, and making a cheaper, maybe a little bit smaller console would be a great way to do it. And what better time to announce it than when nobody's expecting it? But going back to the handheld idea, all I keep thinking about is the year that Portal 2 was announced for PS3 at E3. And on top of the fact that this game was coming to the console that Gabe Newell basically called worthless before, they also announced that if you connected your Steam account to your PSN account, you would get a free Steam copy of Portal 2 with your PS3 disc purchase. That was one of the coolest promotions ever that basically didn't need to happen, but it did, and it was awesome, and it worked really well. Sony and Valve, I feel like, would be smart to partner up because Valve is kind of against Microsoft at this point. It's not totally adversarial, but it's very clear at this point that they don't like being reliant on Microsoft and Windows. I mean, that's why they're using Linux and making Steam OS. So if Sony was able to partner up with them and give you some way to be able to log into your PSN account and link it with your Steam account so that maybe even your saves transferred with the God of War, Days Gone, upcoming Uncharted Legacy of Thieves, Horizon Zero Dawn, and hopefully Ghost of Tsushima's Director's Cut on PC, that would be a really cool way to get PC players more excited to play PlayStation games. And it kind of helps Sony with their hesitation that they always have about making new hardware, right? And they kind of did it to themselves with the Vita by being scared of piracy and including things like proprietary memory cards. So why not just partner up with someone else like Valve that you've already had a friendly relationship with, that's already doing all the hardware work for you, and you just started up this company called PlayStation on PC. Make a partnership out of those two companies and make the Steam Deck the biggest competitor to whatever the handheld Xbox ends up being. I think that'd be a really cool move on Sony's part.